All right. Yeah. Whatever.
Okay, so we're back. I think the last time we talked was at the Combine back in February. So we get to catch up on free agency and looking forward to the draft and talking about wide receivers, pass rushers, and guys you like in this draft and what do we think so far of this team. So I guess we'll hit off the number one topic that we did not get to discuss, and that was the departure of Suggs, C.J. Mosley, Eric Weddle, Zadarius Smith. All those guys are gone. So I guess, Bill, we'll go through first. First thoughts, losing all those guys coming off the year.
Excuse me, I'm feeling sick. Obviously it's tough losing. It's tough losing players that mean a lot to the franchise as far as leadership goes. I think that the most personally disappointing one was Suggs leaving. I love Terrell Suggs, and it sucks seeing that I have to watch him play in a different uniform. But I mean, we've talked about this before. $17 million for C.J. Mosley is a lot of money. I like C.J. Mosley as a player. I wanted to keep C.J. Mosley. I did not believe that he was better, value-wise than Luke Kuechly was at $12 million, $12.5 million, whatever Kuechly's making. And, obviously with the passing of time, I thought, Mosley might come in at like 13 or 13.5 million or something like that. And even at that, I felt like that was probably overpaying, but I was willing to do it because, he's the center of the defense and all that stuff. But 17, no. We just got out from under Flacco's 20, and I'm going to take 17 for C.J. Mosley. Like, I love Mosley as a player. I like him. 17 million for a middle linebacker is a lot. So, we'll see what Peanut and Kenny Young can do this year with the opportunity. And if we just, if we draft somebody, you never know. We'll see what happens as far as that shakes out with the snaps and all that stuff. So, but Zadarius, I felt like that was kind of a foregone conclusion he was going to go. He's another in a long list of players like Kruger and Adalius Thomas and guys that had big success for us that went elsewhere and probably aren't going to be as big a number player with the focus being on them. We've got Judon and Suggs playing outside with Zadarius Smith. That draws a lot of heat off of him, gives him the one-on-one on, whatever, the second best guard or whatever, whoever he's rushing against on third down. Now, that's not to minimize. I don't mean to minimize Zadarius Smith's efforts because I liked him as a player, but I never really thought we were going to get to keep him. I just had crossed my fingers. But we'll see what he does, as a bigger part of the thing, in Green Bay. I don't think Preston Smith is that great of a player, opposite him on the edge. So we'll see what happens when the attention is more on him. And then, Weddle, I was ready to cut Weddle last year. The only reason I liked him at all was his leadership. As long as Earl Thomas's leg is right, I think that's an upgrade at the safety spot, personally. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that having Earl Thomas in the backfield deep as opposed to Weddle makes Tony Jefferson a better player. I haven't really been that big a fan of Jefferson. He has all the components of a player that I really want to like, but he doesn't really do his role or what his role has been when they were sort of interchangeable safeties, him and Weddle. But I think with with Thomas playing the free safety spot now, I think that gives Jefferson more leeway to be near the box and to sort of gamble in a robber role a little bit more than he has where he had responsibilities in coverage. So we'll see what Wink does with that, what the players do, how Thomas reacts to that. But I like Mark Ingram as a player. I like the contract even better. $5 million is nothing for that, for that. So I'm happy with that contract. And I think we have a good stable of backs, despite them, for some reason, passing understanding, having brought in Eddie Lacy for a workout this week. Eddie Lacy, sure, if you give me Eddie Lacy of 2013 or whatever the year was where he tore the league up, I'd take that player. But I don't know. I think that that ship has sailed, I think. So I'm happy with the three we have. If we added a guy in the draft as like a scat back home run hitter type, I would not hate that move. But I like the three that we have.
All right, Al, what are your thoughts there? Free agency, the losses first, and then the gains.
Um, I mean, the I get all the losses. I mean, the Weddle was one that, I mean, everybody was saying, "Hey, cut." I'm probably the most surprised in free agency that we kept Jimmy Smith. I just thought Jimmy Smith was going to be a cap casualty, and they were gonna let him go. I mean, I like Suggs. I mean, I thought Suggs was going to be a lifelong Raven. The problem for Suggs, of course, was, I mean, Arizona was willing to pay him a good amount of money, um, and they gave him a 2-year deal, and I'm pretty sure the Ravens probably wanted him back for a year, and then from the sounds of it, with Suggs, he kind of wanted to move on, or felt it was the right time to move on, with things changing in the front office and things with the team changing. Weddle was a step slow, and I agree, that I think with Earl Thomas being in the backfield, I think Tony Jefferson and Earl Thomas were the same safety, or excuse me, Tony Jefferson and Eric Weddle were the same safety. I mean, those guys were slower, could make some plays in the box, and Weddle could call some things out. He just couldn't get there. He relied a lot on his instincts, but the speed and the agility just weren't there. Um, Earl Thomas will make Tony Jefferson better because he will be able to cover for mistakes on the back end, or he can cover on the back end. So he should be a big help. The Mark Ingram contract. I mean, I thought Mark Ingram was going to get over 20 million. I mean, and when they announced that contract, 3 years, 15 million, I think that's a bargain deal for him. So I mean, the Ravens did well getting him in, and he'll have an opportunity to be the focal point in the running game, for the Ravens. Zadarius Smith, I mean, he was one that everybody kind of knew was going to get priced out of the Ravens range, so he's not the surprise. I mean, the surprise, of course, is C.J. Mosley. I'm just still shocked that the Jets paid him as much as they paid him. Um, from some of the things that Adam Gase has said, I get it. They wanted to bring him in, and kind of bring a culture that the Ravens have had for a while, and try to bring a winning culture in, and he's the player that they're hoping can do that. I mean, I forget the name of the safety up there in New York. They're already talking about, oh, we want to have this Ray Lewis, Ed Reed type of
Jamal
impact here in
Adams.
New York. And first of all, as a Ravens fan, that's just disrespectful. You're talking about two first ballot Hall of Famers, and you're talking about two guys that C.J. Mosley's done a lot of great things, but I'm sorry, Ray Lewis had won a Super Bowl by now. I mean, he was a Defensive Player of the Year. Um, they're not even in that same breath just yet. They're still too young in there. They're still too young in their careers, and they're not. And those two guys aren't even the best players at their position in the league right now. I mean, when guys start talking about middle linebackers, I mean, they're talking about the Luke Kuechlys of the world, guys that can play the run and can cover. I'm looking more at like a Deion Jones down there in Atlanta that can cover, that can play the run. Um, so I think C.J. Mosley was a great player, um, but for the kind of money that he got paid, I mean, 80 plus million, you have to let him walk and go with Peanut and with Kenny Young. Peanut played well last year. He made a lot of plays, huge games, of course, against the Chargers that helped put the Ravens into the playoffs. Um, so CJ Mosley is the surprise, but I think it looks like DeCosta's trying to turn things around and get guys signed a little earlier. So we've seen the Tavon Young deal already. I mean, they're already talking about Matt Judon and Ronnie Stanley, and trying to get deals done with those guys as well. So I like the change that CJ Mosley has created, because I think the Ravens are going to try to do a much better job of locking guys up earlier. But the two guys that the Ravens got, I like them. Jury's still out though. I need to see what they do in the draft, and maybe who they sign after, I think, that May 4th comp pick window. closes and free agent signings don't impact their comp picks.
Yeah, I think it's the 8th, but yeah, your point still stands. And also, I had neglected to mention Justin Bethel. I was kind of happy with that signing. The guy's a standout special teams player. I mean, obviously we don't need another cornerback, so that his role is going to be completely on special teams. But as far as a leader of that unit, I like it. I mean, we've signed 3 guys who are could potentially be core leaders of all 3 levels of the football team, which I do like.
Yeah, you also forgot about Robert Griffin III. We also re-signed him. That's right. Well, I'll go back to the core guys, and I'll skip through a lot of the BS because a lot has already been said. Suggs is a guy I think that most Ravens fans identify with because he's been in this team for such a long time. Him getting sacks and him making plays in this city has been huge. So I think losing Suggs is probably the biggest impact out of his free agent. I wasn't expecting to lose him. Mosley, I think we all had talked about. He's going to want a lot of money. So that's fine. I'm not going to go over everything with him. But Weddle, I think we all agreed. Like you said before, he was just a step too slow the past 2 seasons. So not much more to be said there. Zarius Smith, I agree with. He's a Paul Kruger part 2. That guy would just fail like every other Raven player that left and get paid a lot of money. Adding Earl Thomas, I think a lot of people are expecting an Ed Reed out of him. I don't think you should be expecting Ed Reed exactly, but he does book in that deep passes that we're getting against us. And they had to kind of answer the Odell Beckham problem because he's going to go right past some of our guys. And if Earl Thomas back there, that really shortens the field. That really gives us a better opportunity to win against the Browns because Browns got good. Mark Ingram, he's 29. He kind of worries me a little bit. He's a little bit older of a guy. I don't know that they don't need to draft another running back in this class or get a free agent running back at some point in time here because Kenneth Dixon is not going to be here much longer. I can tell you that much. If he's not even out sometime in the preseason, he may get cut. I don't know. That guy's gone, man. I'm not going to be surprised if they do go running back. But with that being said, good free agent ads. This defensive team is looking bend, don't break. We're going to see what they do in the draft. Obviously, we'll get to that coming up. But I think the Suggs is just for me. It's kind of hard with Suggs. That's it. We'll move on to one of my favorite positions in this draft and a position of need that we need to look at, wide receiver. So, Al, give me a wide receiver you like in the first round and sell me on why we should draft him.
So, wide receiver, I think, is just going to be a tough. Wide receiver is a tough position. Everybody likes the DK Metcalfs of the world. I'm still not a DK Metcalf fan. My honest position is I prefer the Ravens to trade back. The guys I like in the first round for the Ravens, I like AJ Brown. I don't think Hakeem Butler is a first round receiver. He'd be a guy that I would trade back for. I'm not a fan of Paris Campbell, the Ohio State kid that everybody seems to be mocking to the Ravens in the first round. And the only reason why is because a lot that I've seen from him and a lot of the big plays that he's made are all on screen type passes, short style passes, and he's not going to be able to take all those to the house in the NFL. He's got to show he can kind of get down the field and run some routes. I think Hakeem Butler gives you a little bit of that. I think AJ Brown gives you some of that as well. If they're sitting there at 22 and the decision is to go wide receiver, I'd probably go AJ Brown or N'Keal Harry from Arizona State. I haven't watched enough of him. Those two guys are guys that I like. I mean, Kelvin Harmon has the production, but I think they could trade back and still get him. My thought, if I'm the Costa, I'm trading back to get Hakeem Butler in the second round because I think he'll be there.
All right, hang on. You guys sell me on Butler. What's he going to do for this team? Sell me. I'm a Ravens fan. Sell me. I traded back. We got this. Sell me. Tell me how excited you're going to be if you got this guy. What does he add?
He adds a player that can catch. I mean, he's had production, averaged 22 yards a catch, 60 receptions, over 1,300 yards last year. So he gives you a guy, and the reason why I like him is because as a value pick in the second round is because he gives you a guy that Lamar Jackson, quite frankly, can throw the ball up to, and he can go make a play. He can actually catch the ball. I don't think he's a Rashad Perriman, a guy with just blazing speed, and that's it. He's shown that he can run some routes. He can high point the ball. He can make some catches, and he could be that guy that could make plays for the Ravens. And I feel like AJ Brown is a guy in the same mold, and he's a guy that I would also be interested in taking. If the Ravens stay put in the first round and they say they're going receiver, AJ Brown's the guy for me that I would take. Again, because of the this is a guy who was productive, who can again, and I hate to stress it, but can catch the football. I feel like that's got to be the first thing with any one of these receivers that the Ravens take. Like they can't take a project guy that we can help him catch the football. And I think AJ Brown, if they go first round receiver, if they trade back second round, Hakeem Butler gives you that. He's got some decent speed. He's got size at 6'5", 220, 227, and the college production is there as well. So he'd be nice to pair with the tight ends. You've got some big targets. He's a big, strong guy that can actually block as well. So that's why I take Hakeem Butler, trade back and get Hakeem Butler in the second round, so you can also try to snatch a pass rusher in the second round.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go next. My guy is A.J. Brown. If I was at 22 and he happened to fall down to me, I would take A.J. Brown all day long. He's like 6'1", like you said, 230 pounds. He's a big body wide receiver. He can go over the middle. He can attack. He's like a running back, basically, out in the field as a wide receiver. This guy can mull over people. He's a perfect Raven wide receiver. And he caught, I think, 60 receptions for like 1,100 yards. So he doesn't have to have a lot of catches to get a lot of yards. He's a big body guy. That would add to this offense, I think, the missing piece, because two tight ends in the middle. You could also run A.J. Brown through the middle. You could run A.J. Brown out on the flat. You can run him in all sorts of different routes. He's good. And when you get to the colder months of the year, the winter, A.J. Brown is your kind of guy you want to go to. This guy's going to make the big catch over the middle and get that first down for you. So if I'm going to sell you, I'm going to sell you an A.J. Brown. I think he's probably one of the only few wide receivers in this draft that's a true number one. And the Baltimore Ravens have been missing a true number one wide receiver forever. They never had one. And if you're at 22 and A.J. Brown comes down, this guy's a true number one wide receiver. That's my sell. Bill, sell me on your wide receiver.
Let me first say that I like the way Hakeem Butler plays, but Butler had 11 drops last year. That was pretty concerning. It plagued him the entire year. He had drops in almost every game. So, I like him as a player. I don't think he is not a player that I feel you can count on to come down with the ball 100% of the time. I think he's going to have drops. I think he's going to have drops. So
I missed the 11 drops.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is concerning for me. I mean, the skill set is there. Obviously, the speed is there, obviously. But yeah, he had his fair share of drops and then some, I think. In fact, he had to address it in like the post-game press conferences a number of times in the past year. So, the drops are concerning. For me, as far as first-round guys go, there's really only two guys that I would feel good about getting in the first round. I'd be okay with a couple guys.
No, Mike. No. The question is, sell me on your one wide receiver comes up 22. You say,
yeah, I'm getting to my wide receiver, man. Give him my chance.
This is one guy. Not two.
The first guy is I will agree with you that you guys have both said as far as AJ Brown goes. Like AJ Brown is a player I would be very comfortable with in the first round. But the player that I like best, Rob, the one player that I like best, Rob, is N'Keal Harry from Arizona State. I feel like he for my money is the most likely to be a legit number one alpha on a team. I feel like he had bad quarterback play during the entire time he was at Arizona State and still produced. He was at or about 80 catches and at or about like 1,050 yards the last 2 years with 8 or 9 touchdowns each of those 2 years. And he's alpha. He is alpha. He snatches the ball out of the air no matter where it is. He can catch it at uncomfortable positions and adjust to the ball. He makes plays across the middle. He's not afraid to take the big hit. He delivers. He just annihilates guys in the running game as a run blocker. And like obviously, we've said in public on a couple of occasions now that is very important to us. And so yeah, I mean, I just think. N'Keal Harry. My dream scenario would be to be able to slide back just a little bit and get N'Keal Harry at like 30-ish. I don't know how feasible that is because Seattle's going to be looking to trade back right in front of us at 21. So I don't know how many takers we're going to have or what kind of deal we're going to get out of it. I don't believe it's going to be possible to slide back into the back of the first round and pick up a second-round pick. I don't think we're going to get that for that move. It'll probably more likely be another third-round pick. And then maybe we could, package a couple of picks to move up in that spot. I still believe Al had mentioned Jimmy Smith earlier that he was surprised Jimmy Smith was still around. I still think that there is a possibility he gets moved on draft day. This is not a strong group of corners. There are mixed opinions on Greedy, whether he's able to hold up, as far as a tackling player, not making business decisions on every chance to tackle a person. And some of the coverage abilities of some of the other corners. I still think it's a possibility that Jimmy Smith gets moved during the draft. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, I am more inclined, honestly, to take one of the pass rushers at number 22 versus a wide receiver at 22. I would much rather slide back and take my chances either at the beginning, at the end of the first or the beginning of the second round of getting our choice of the wideouts.
All right. Let me throw out we'll go pass rushers. So let's do that next, actually. Al, if you're a 22, is there a pass rusher you want? That you like that's there 22 if they get to 22 because they go fast.
I mean, there's a lot of pass rushers that I want at 22.
Tell me I guess it's just we got at the 22. If you think who's there, sell me on.
So I'm taking Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, Montez Sweat, and Brian Burns off because I don't think any of those guys are making it to 22.
I agree.
So we'll start there. I think the Ravens have two options here. One, I think, is to take Clelin Ferrell and make him the pick, the kid out of Clemson. I thought he's had a solid career at the collegiate level. I mean, just strong off the line. I mean, he showed it. I feel like in the national championship game, making plays. He'd be the guy that I would take in the first round. I think with all of the guys that are going to get taken ahead of him, I feel like there would be better value for the Ravens at other positions unless you take Farrell. I mean, Farrell's played against solid competition. I mean, I think he was just kind of the standout on the Clemson defense, really kind of up to the end, I guess, with I forget the defensive tackle they got suspended that should be a first rounder too during the playoffs. But I think he's a good pick. I mean, he's a guy that's had college production. I mean, he's shown. I mean, he's a good. I think he's a good athlete. So I think he can get to the quarterback, and he can be a guy that maybe the Ravens can depend on the outside. Now, with that being said, I think that the Ravens are going to have the opportunity to get a guy later, and the guy that I think for whatever reason, I mean, he's clearly he's dropping down draft boards. Is this Ja'Kai Polite fella? I think if he's there in the third round, I would take him. Um, because I think every year there are guys that just don't test well at the combine. But I mean, the collegiate production is there. The quick first step off the line, but this guy just leaving tackles in their stances is there. I mean, so he had a solid year of production there at Florida in the SEC, the premier conference. I mean, he was a full time defender and pass rusher on that team, so he wasn't just a pass rush specialist. He'd kind of be the guy that I'd be looking at, especially in a trade back scenario. Especially if you can get a third round pick at the top end of the third round, he'd be the guy that I would take. Um, just based on I feel like good motor, good first step. I mean, good first step off of the line. I mean, he's just got great quickness. So he's my guy that I would take. I think the Ravens are just going to get pigeonholed into receiver in the first round because they don't have anything right now. Um, and the depth on defense is it's a lot deeper on the defensive side of the football than it is on the offensive side this year. So if AJ Brown or one of those guys is there, you've got to take him over a pass rusher, and you got to figure out the pass rusher piece later in the draft.
All right. Bill, again, the pass rusher comes in there at 22. Who do you like? And sell me on him. You're at 22. Here's this pass rusher. The Ravens, you got to take this guy.
I mean, usually Al started off his conversation by basically saying he didn't think that any of the top four guys were going to be there. I'm hopeful that one of them makes it there. Brian Burns is the player I like best. He's excellent against as far as a pass rusher goes. I think he also plays the run better than advertised. I think, a handful of the talking heads out there look at him as like a pass rush only just because of his frame. And he is slender, but I thought he looked powerful in the snaps that I saw. He plays hard. He's running down ball carriers from the backside. So I like him as a player. So that's who I'm hoping makes it to 22. And so that's really the player that I would hope to get at 22. We'll see if that happens. You guys seem much more pessimistic than I was. I was kind of crossing my fingers. So we'll see how that goes. A player that I like later in the draft, Rob and I talked about this earlier on the phone, Raheem Bingham from Arkansas State. The Pro Football Focus had some interesting numbers about him, so it made me want to watch his the YouTube game videos that are on for him. He had the second highest pressure percentage by snap, and only second to Bosa last year. So I watched him, and I mean, he was playing lesser competition. He plays in the Sun Belt, so it's not a comparison to the Power Five or any of that kind of stuff. But he abused players the entire year. The tackles for loss was off the charts. It was like 26.5 or something ridiculous. He had 9.5 sacks, I think it was. But yeah, he's an interesting player. Smaller frame, 6'2", 245. So he's like sort of like a smallish pass rusher, but multiple. He can drop and that kind of stuff too. So I thought he was an interesting player because he's a small school guy. He'll be available later mid rounds, probably fourth-ish type player would be my guess. So yeah.
All right, yes, my turn. Farrell was the kind of guy I like too from Clemson. He's kind of a big body kind of defensive end, but I kind of soured on him a little bit now. So I have to be honest with you. If it's not Montez Sweat, if it's not Nick Bosa, if it's not one of those guys, I'm okay with moving back or trading back or taking a wide receiver. So pass rushers, I've really not liked this class a lot. Other than a few of the top guys. Some guys a little bit later on, maybe like a Christian Miller out of Alabama, maybe like in the fourth round, fifth round. But we already have Matt Judon, you already have Tim Williams, you have Tyrus Bowser, you have some guys there that can pass rush the passer. So I don't know if you're not getting one of these top guys because for a minute I thought Sweat was going to get down there to 22. Of course, he came at the combine with great numbers, shot right up the draft board. So I just don't know if there's a pass rusher there right now. I'll keep looking, and by the time we get to our final mock in a few more weeks before the actual draft, I will have a guy I probably like at 22 at that point. But Farrell would probably be the guy at Clemson I would take, but I'm a little sour on him. I would kind of trade back. But yeah, I agree with Al. If AJ Brown is there, you're gonna have to go wide receiver. I agree they are pigeonholed into that, but they're gonna take more than one wide receiver in this draft. So he says he's gonna take a few swings. He's got some picks in the third and fourth round. Is anybody like a wide receiver deeper in this draft at all? Bill, any deep wide receivers you like?
There's two guys that I like. I've liked Kelvin Harmon from the beginning. Him and N'Keal Harry have kind of been my two favorite guys, and he's a guy that hasn't really gotten any love in the entire process. He ran, a kind of mediocre 40 time at the combine, but all the rest of his numbers, his athletic numbers, were all really good, and I thought he was an extremely polished wide receiver as far as route running goes, but then he also has like a nasty streak, and I think he's the type of player that might slide all the way down to like the end of the second round or the beginning of the third round, just because of all the other hype around so many guys running fast. Like, Al mentioned Paris Campbell, who I want no part of either. I think he's at best Percy Harvin, and he's not as talented as Harvin was coming out. And so, the number of wide receivers that are getting hyped now because of the speed triangle numbers is outrageous. And like some of these guys aren't as good at playing wide receiver as they are at running around in gym shorts. So, Kelvin Harmon's a player that I'd be very happy to get at that point, where earlier in the draft season, I probably would not have expected him to be available that late. And it's just through the process of the athletic testing that he's moved down the board. And I think I sent out a text when it happened, but I saw that the Ravens had in Justin Christian from Marist, the small school stud. He had averaged 25 yards a catch as a senior, but had eye-popping numbers even before that. He's like a big play guy as a small school guy, so available late or maybe even undrafted would be a player that I'd be. He would be like, the camp star. Oh, did you see that catch the guy made? Oh, blah, blah, blah. He's my favorite. It's Clarence Moore, whatever. DeVar Darling, everybody falls in love because he makes an insane catch in training camp. But, I think long-term developmentally, he is a player that I would be interested to see. Reminds me on tape the movement type of Nelson Aguilar when Aguilar came out. Now, obviously, Aguilar was a much more refined player than just like a go route or like a post route type player, but the same movement type, same body style, like sleek and smooth. So I'm interested to see if like those visits mean something for our team. I think, and if he's a player they have their eye on as either a late round pick or a priority free agent.
All right. Well, I'll go next. The guy I kind of liked in the third, fourth round for them to grab as a second wide receiver is David Sills. He's out of West Virginia, 6'3", 211 pounds. I think he had about 986 yards, 15 touchdowns last year. I like him just because he's 6'3". He's a big wide receiver they can bring in when they're in the red zone. If you add in Andrews, you add in Hurst, and they've had A.J. Brown, you got three very tall, very physical wide receivers that can get into the red zone, catch a touchdown. Sills is a pretty good route runner. It's a little rusty, but I think in this offense, the way they're going to be running it, I think he'll only have to catch 2 or 3 balls per game. But he'll make those big first downs, or he'll make those big 5-10 yard catches that will help us move the chains down the field. So David Sills is the guy I like out of West Virginia. Al, anybody you like in that third, fourth round, since they might be grabbing another wide receiver? Al, you're on mute.
I'll jump up. There he is.
All right. One guy that I like, and I love the name, Lil Jordan Humphrey. He had some great college production down at Texas, but I probably wouldn't take him. I like the name though. Jacoby Myers is it? I think would be a good possession receiver if you could get an AJ Brown to be a little bit more of a dynamic receiver for you. He had great production next to Kelvin Harmon down there at NC State, so I mean he was another one that caught 80 plus balls um, last year. So I don't know if it's just a function of that offense down there. The guys just get the opportunity. But he ran better than Harmon at the combine. He was around a 4.6 instead of I think Harmon ran like a 4.8 at the at the combine. So I mean,
Harmon
considerably.
was 4.61, 4.61
Uh,
for Harmon.
I thought he was slower than that, but okay. So then they're kind of right around in the same make and the same mold. Not the 4.4, 4.3, 4.3 kind of guys, but I mean they've both shown that they can play. Um, so so for me, he's kind of the guy that I like. If you get AJ Brown in the first round, if you don't get AJ Brown in the first round, and you've kind of got to look for somebody that you can find that's going to be a little bit more explosive in the latter rounds of the draft. So Jacoby Myers is my late round guy. But that kid from West Virginia is pretty good too, Rob. So I wouldn't be upset with that pick either.
Thank you, Al. Go ahead, Bill. You had something you wanted to add?
No, but David Sills is one of the players I really don't want. I actually like his teammate Greg Jennings better than Sills. So it just goes to show everybody's got their own flavor, you know.
Yeah, and your flavor's wrong. All right. Now, I have seen this in a few mock drafts. Offensive line. Obviously, it's not the big pick. It's not the wow pick or anything here. Who do you like if they trade back to get an offensive lineman? Anyone particularly on your list? So I'll start with you, Al. Anyone you like?
There's a couple that I like. I'm trying to get the kid's name from NC State. Because I've seen him mocked to the Ravens in the first round
Bradbury.
of the
Yeah,
yeah.
Bradbury, yeah.
So I've seen Bradbury mocked to the Ravens in the first round of the draft. The other guy that I like, and I think he's going to be a really good one, is Cody Ford from Oklahoma. Um, I don't know if he's going to play tackle at the NFL level or if he's going to get kicked inside and play guard. But he was smooth at the combine. I mean, just fluid in a lot of his movements. He was quick enough to get edge rushers coming off the edge. And I know tackle isn't the need for the Ravens, but I think this kid could bump inside and play guard for the Ravens as well. Kind of a little nasty. He'd be kind of what the Ravens need, especially with this running game. I mean, a big kid, 6'4", 329 pounds. So Cody Ford's a guy that I like. If you're talking about a guy in the first round, Garrett Bradbury, he'd be a guy that could come in and play center for the Ravens. Um, I don't necessarily want to see Skura come back. So anybody, I feel like will probably be a better addition. I don't think that Skura really had that same, just nastiness and mean streak that Ryan Jensen had. That I think really kind of propelled him to getting the big contract that he did. So those are two guys that I like for the Ravens in the first round of the draft. Um, and then outside of that, I don't know too much about many of the late round guys in the draft. I mean, Connor McGovern is a guy I think that could play on the inside for the Ravens, and he's probably going to be a guy that'll be available. If I had to guess, in the third to fourth round, is where I think he's projected to be picked. So he could be a guy, the kid out of Penn State that they could look at. But the guys that I really like, and I would not be upset if they took Cody Ford in the first round. I mean, I think Jawan Taylor and Jonah Williams obviously will not be there. I think Andre Dillard is going to be more of a tackle, and not a guard. But Cody Ford I like, and I could get on the Garrett Bradbury trade. Um, but Cody Ford, I would take him at 22.
Wow. I'm just going to say one thing. There's most of the guys you just hit on, the guys that I all like as well in that first round. So if McCoy, Bradbury were there, if they took a center, I'd be happy with that. I know it's not the big wow pick, but to make the offensive line better helps Lamar Jackson. That helps the running game. That helps make this team a much, much, much more efficient team coming in next year. So taking an offensive line that early would not make me upset. All the guys you just mentioned are all the guys I really like, actually, Al. So I don't have much more to add. Bill? Any
Yeah,
offensive linemen?
Rob, the only thing that I'll add is I think the other thing that Cody Ford would add if they took him in the first round is if they're not all the way sold on Ronnie Stanley and paying him big money to be the left tackle of the future, you'd have some options with Cody Ford to say, okay, Ronnie, we're letting you go, and we'll figure it out if we want to move Orlando Brown over there or if we want to let Cody Ford play. Maybe those two guys end up being our tackles of the future.
Or if they take Greg Little, which would be interesting too,
Yeah.
tag him in there. So it's very interesting if they did go offensive lineman. Bill?
I like both of the guys that you guys have mentioned, Bradbury and Ford. I would be happy with Ford at 22. I'd be all right. I'd get on board with Bradbury. I'd rather trade back a little bit, maybe, hopefully, and get him again in the 30-ish range. That would be ideal. But as far as like later round guys or guys that I might hope to get in a trade back scenario, if we move back, completely out of the first round for like a second and a third or 2 seconds or something like that. There are two guys, Dalton Risner, Kansas State. I think he's a nasty, he's more of a right tackle type, but I think he would be good at either guard spot. And he played center, I think, as a freshman, if I remember reading that correctly. I think that's right. And another guy who I like later, and I think I've mentioned it before, Chuma Adoga. I think he played right tackle for USC, but I think he's more of a guard type. I would want him to play at left guard. He is not 100% technically sound at this point, but like super athletic, super like sort of country strong. He's not a very big guy. He's like 6'4", 295 or something like that. But he had. I think the reason I started looking at him was he had the longest arms of any of the guards. It was like 36 and 7/8 or something insane. So it was like an 84-inch wingspan. So I started looking at him and I was like, Jesus, this guy's really good. So he'd be a player I'd be interested in the middle rounds, 3rd, 4th round. I'd be happy to get a player like that. But yeah, the two guys you mentioned would be the ones I would want in the first round.
Great. All right. Let me throw this one out there for you. Who would you trade up for? Now, I did look up the draft trade chart just to kind of give you an idea. The move from 22 to 15 would cost a 3rd round draft pick. So if you had to give up a 3rd round draft pick to move up to 15, who would you move up for? Bill, who would you move up for?
Well, if you guys are more pessimistic about Brian Burns than I am, Brian Burns is a player that I really like. But really the only player that because I still actually believe that I've got a chance of getting Burns at 22. So the player that I really would – the only player that I would really trade up for, other than like Bosa or whatever, which is ridiculous. They're not going to make it at 15. But if Devin White made it to like 12, 13, 14, I would be calling teams. I'd be trying to get him because I think he is like a game-changing talent on the interior at middle linebacker, and pairing him with the rotation of Peanut and Kenny Young is would be very exciting to me because I think those two players add more as a rotation platoon, with mixed snaps from different places than like every down in and down out player. So that's really Devin White's the only player I'd be really interested realistically in trading up for if he happened to make it to that far, which I don't believe is going to happen.
No, Devin White will not make it anywhere close to that number.
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm just asking, every year a player falls down. There's got to be somebody that you would think, hey, here's someone who should have been in the top 10 that might fall down. There's nobody you think you would go up for at 15 that could be there that might fall out of that top 10 a little bit. How about Ed Oliver? Would you trade up for Ed Oliver at 15?
No, I'm like I said, I'm not trading up for anybody but Devin White. Devin White is the player that I think, if he's like, Devin White, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Devin White makes it to like 11 or something, like, I don't know, like there's whatever, 2 wide receivers go in the first 10 picks, like 5 DNs go in the first 10 picks. Like, it's not inconceivable that Devin White makes it to like 11. I'd start calling teams. You never know. A team. I don't even know who's up there, but like whatever. Some team wants more depth. First and a third, and get Devin White. I would definitely do that. So you just never know. I remember reading a story about the year that the year that Baltimore took Jonathan Ogden 4th overall. The Giants at 5 didn't have a guy they really liked. There was disagreement in their draft room. I just read that article this week, and they didn't have a guy that they loved at 5. And they started calling teams to try to trade back. And the Houston Oilers, I think at that time, offered them from 14 to move from 14 to 5, offered them a 7th round pick. And the Giants didn't end up taking it because they thought, oh, God, we're going to look like fools. We can't do that. So they took some guy they weren't all sold on, and he didn't do shit in the NFL. But you just never know. You never know, So, hey, yeah, Devin White. Give me Devin White. Screw you and he's never going to make it there. I'm living the dream, man.
Okay, well, your dream is over. All right, Al. Who would you trade up for up to 15? You lose a 3rd round pick to move up to the 15th, so the Redskins. Who would you trade up for if we saw someone coming down, fell out of the top 10?
I don't think they trade up for a guy like Ed Oliver. I think this year is probably top, I'm going to say 7, 8 picks. In some random order, I feel like they're pretty much locked in. And I mean, those 8, I feel like are Kyler Murray, Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, Josh Allen. I still think Ed Oliver is a top pick. I don't think he goes in that group. But Jawan Taylor is another one that I will add to that top 8. Montez Sweat will be the next. I think TJ Hawkinson goes earlier than a lot of people think. And Devin White is it Devin White's is going to be a guy that's up there. I think maybe Devin White gets to 10. I just don't think he's there at 15. I think the guy that maybe is there is Devin Bush. He's 5'11", 234, 235. I mean, is he too undersized? I don't know. He's got good speed and good cover skills. I just don't see this as a draft that I would trade up for. Now, if Ed Oliver's maybe sitting there at 18, I'd take him. I'd maybe try to move up and try to get him, see what it would take. I don't think I'd go all the way to 15 and give up a 3rd rounder, but if I get a little closer, and I could swap picks, I think that guy in the Ravens defense, playing a 3-4 defensive end. I mean, he could be pretty disruptive, and actually get some opportunities to rush the passer from the inside, replace what you lost in Zadarius Smith, and kind of be that guy that they haven't really got any kind of rush out of Brandon Williams. But if you kind of line him up with Brandon Williams, Michael Pierce, and then kind of let him be the guy that's going to go rush the passer. But I think that Oliver could potentially be there at 22, quite frankly. I'd love Brian Burns to be there at 15. I don't I just don't think he is. I mean, what he ran like a 4.5 at the combine. I mean, he was fast for the end. So I don't think I don't think he makes it out of the top 12. I won't be surprised if Brian Burns is the top 10 pick.
4.53, 4.53 for Burns.
Yeah, that's he's not getting to the 20s. I mean, he's not. You're gonna have a hard time getting him. I don't know. I don't know. It's Kyler Murray. I think is going in the top 10. There seems to be a lot of chatter about Dwayne Haskins, and I don't know if it's real or if it's fake. But worst case scenario, Brian Burns makes it to 13. That's my worst case scenario for Brian Burns.
All right.
Four,
So you got nobody.
I will say now, I have no idea if this affects anything at all or not. But the Dolphins, who pick 13, if I'm not wrong, they just signed the top pass rusher from the AAF. Not that that's going to mean anything. But I'm just saying it might mean that they don't want to use that pick necessarily at number 13. I'm not saying they don't still need pass rushers
because they got somebody from the AAF.
You guys are saying it every year. Every year somebody shakes down that nobody thought he was going to be there, and all of a sudden he's a Raven. Oh, it happens all the time. Oh, you just never know. So.
Hey, we'll get to that in a second.
I'm not giving up the hope. I'm living the dream, Brian Burns' dream.
What am I trading? I'm trading the pick to move up to get one of those picks that they should have gotten last year. You name them: Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore. I'm trading up to 16 to get Derwin James. I'm still salty about that.
All right,
that's who I'm trading them for.
All right there. All right. Well, there are two players I would trade up for who I think could be in that range. One is Jonah Williams, offensive tackle guard out Alabama. He'd be a very good pick. Alabama average 5.3 yards, looks like here, per carry in his gap. So he's a very good offensive guard tackle that could come in and play. And again, like you said, there's a possibility of, hey, Ronnie Stanley, we're not going to re-sign you. We have Jonah Williams. We have Orlando Brown. Hey, this guy can come and play guard this year. That can help the run game. And obviously, we're going to be looking at running the football a lot this upcoming year for Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards. So I'm going to go with Jonah Williams. If he happens to drift in that range, I think he'll actually make a move to move up a few spots to go get him. The other player I was thinking about here, and if this guy happens to come down the pipeline, and you never know, but Ed Oliver was my other guy. And I think if he got in that 16, 17, 18, if he starts drifting in that range, I would not be shocked if they move up to 19 or 18 to go get him. Because 19 is the Titans. The Titans are looking to trade out of that position. And don't be shocked, too, if a tight end happens to get there they like. They like tight ends. I don't know why, but they do like tight ends on this team. Just don't be shocked. All right. I'll go ahead and move on. What's more important to hit on in this particular draft? Wide receiver or pass rusher? Bill, you can go first. What's more important for this team to hit on, wide receivers or pass rushers?
Well, I think it depends on two things. Are we planning to have Matthew Judon be on this team long term? Realistically, like, are we going to give him a contract? And that goes without knowing what production he's going to put up this year if he does not sign a contract in this offseason, and goes out and has whatever 14 sacks or something. We're probably not going to re-sign him. But so it depends on Judon. Like, are we going to sign Judon? Is Judon part of our long-term plans? And do we find out anything about Bowser and Tim Williams? Can we rely upon them for production given the increase in snaps that's bound to come with both Za'Darius and Terrell Suggs out the door? So those two things depend on how important pass rusher is. But, if Judon is not back after this coming season and we don't get really anything more than what we've gotten already out of Bowser or Tim Williams, then we're up Schitt's Creek on pass rushers. So we have to have one. I mean, from my perspective, it's 1A and 1B as far as needs go. Now, I am no big fan of going into the season with Skura or Alex Lewis or, whatever, at guard and tackle. But, they are good enough that I can field a team. If we don't have production out of Bowser or Tim Williams, we have to have a pass rusher out of the draft, period. Because it doesn't matter how good our corners are. If he can stand, if NFL quarterback can stand around back there and scan the field, we're going to get picked apart if we can't get to the pass rush. So, but at the same time, how many years are we going to have the same conversation about wideouts? We have to get one. We just have, please God, if Seth Roberts is the big move we make at wide receiver, I mean, I don't know what to do with that. So, I mean, and that's not even shitting on Seth Roberts. I'm happy to have him just because we have no one. But, we need to get somebody at wideout big time. Two somebody's preferably. I would very much like to get, a top guy, if it's, like we said, either AJ Brown or for me, N'Keal Harry, in the first round, and someone in the mid to late mid rounds that, two guys that maybe complement each other, bringing two guys at the same time, Ebony and Ivory.
All right. Please stop that. All right. So Bill, wide receiver is more important than pass rusher. That's what it sounds like from you. Al?
No, I don't. I mean, I would say pass rusher is 1A and wide receiver is 1B. But we need a player at both positions in this draft.
Okay. So you're saying pass rusher is more important. All right, Al, pass rusher, wide receiver. What's more important that they hit on in this draft?
Pass rusher. They look great on the back end, and I think this could be one of the first years where you're looking at all of the safety position, the corner position, and saying, you know what, the Ravens don't need to draft anywhere. The area where the Ravens have to draft is at linebacker. They need guys. They need inside linebackers. They need outside linebackers, and pass rusher is really where the need is. You need someone who can get to the quarterback because the inside linebacker spot, I think that they'll be able to get somebody in the second wave of free agency. Maybe Zach Brown. I'm still kind of miffed at what's going on there, and why he hasn't taken a visit anywhere. Or at least that's rumored and been in the news. So I think pass rusher is really the focus and the most important because to all of the points, I mean, your secondary can't hold up. Teams have won Super Bowls with decent wide receivers, and I think you have that right now with Chris Moore, with Willie Snead, and what people are forgetting is the Ravens have Hayden Hurst, who's coming back 100% healthy, no screw in the foot. He's coming back 100% healthy. Mark Andrews had a heck of a season last year and had already shown he built some rapport with Lamar Jackson. And then you bring back Nick Boyle, who's not a game changer, but he's a guy that can catch the football, that can block, and that can give you kind of both things. But Mark Anderson is a game changer. I mean, he can make big plays, and he's shown he can make big plays. And I think Hayden Hurst is gonna get there, or at least that's my hope for Hayden Hurst. So I think pass rusher is the top. I mean, they're both needs that you're gonna have to address in the draft. But if a Brian Burns is on the board and AJ Brown is on the board, two guys that you love, I'm probably taking Brian Burns.
Wow, that's the wrong answer. The correct answer is wide receiver. When you look at this team, you just mentioned Willie Snead and you just mentioned Chris Moore. That's a joke. No, it's not really a joke, but no, you need a number one wide receiver. and nobody is signing here. Steph Roberts, no. You need a number one wide receiver. You need to have somebody that can throw the football to and rely on. So they're going to go wide receiver in this. Pass rusher, no. You have Tim Williams. You have Tyrus Bowser. You're going to have to see what you get out of these guys. You already have guys in those positions. Wide receiver, if I came out and said, hey, who are you covering? Who's Chris Moore? That's my whole entire point. These guys aren't threats. No one's going to take us seriously. You're not going to move the football down the field. We need a true number one wide receiver. A.J. Brown, I'm going to – actually, you know what? I'm already going to say it. I'm falling off of A.J. Brown. That's the guy. I'm starting to get my focus is starting to come on him. I want A.J. Brown. I'm sold. A.J. Brown.
Rob, I got to jump in here. How many Super Bowls has Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., Antonio Brown, all the guys who are the top receivers? How many Super Bowls have these guys won?
None, because none of them are Ravens.
As many as Chris Moore, right?
What's up, Vince?
Gentlemen, what's going on? What's happening?
Put a mute on that. Put a mute on that guy. Put a mute. I got fourth place. I didn't get paid out.
We pay top 3 every year, Rob. Check the tape. And actually, I think I passed you anyway.
Yeah, you
did. So you might want to check.
7th. It's all right. I don't feel so bad now. All right. Let's let Vince catch up here just a little bit. So Vince, I want you to just kind of throw your thoughts on free agency, Earl Thomas, all of that, losing of Suggs, and we'll start there. And I'll give you a couple of catch-up questions. All right.
Yeah, sounds good. I think free agency overall, to be honest, I think was a bit disappointing, mainly from the standpoint of CJ and Suggs. I understand how we arrived at both decisions. I understand kind of the long-term big picture view. Certainly CJ's price tag, once we decided not to tag him.
I'm assuming that y'all can hear Vince. I can't hear him at all. So just FYI, I don't hear anything from him.
You guys hear me or?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so assuming, I was saying essentially that it's CJ and, CJ and Suggs are obviously very disappointing. I think CJ, from obviously the standpoint, I think we've talked about this in terms of the contract being prohibitive, but, I think the bottom line is, to me, he's a guy that come hell or high water, you don't let leave the organization. So, we can talk all day about how we arrived there. I think looking back, it's obvious that our failure to lock him up last year was probably the biggest miss. Obviously the Jets came in with a contract that was just, a ton for a middle linebacker. But, I completely reject the notion that, he will be easily replaced or we won't feel the impact of losing CJ. So, that was a big disappointment. And then the Suggs thing is I just don't understand how it was handled, and again, I think we talked about it, a little bit before, so I'm not going to belabor that point, but, I get ultimately that, it looks like it to me, I don't think money was a huge issue. I think it was more about where we were going as a team, how Suggs perceived what his role would be or what his value was to this team in a DaCosta era. It's clear that whatever happened, Eric and Suggs just weren't on the same page, and it resulted in I think kind of a messy departure when, in my eyes, it seems like that should have been a no-brainer to bring him back on a 1-year deal and kind of have him finish up as a Raven really as he should have. So, and, to address the free agency question, we haven't done anything to replace those two guys yet. So that's obviously a big gaping hole, as we go through this. Obviously the big splash was Earl Thomas. I think that takes a lot of the sting out of losing not only CJ and Suggs, but then obviously he's a direct replacement for Weddle. So, and not only a replacement for Weddle in terms of what he brings on the field, which I think is at this point, when healthy, clearly more than Eric, but the leadership, the ability to be the center fielder, captain of the defense, he will very easily step into that role, and he's going to have to carry the weight that CJ and Eric brought from a leadership and kind of captain of the defense, quarterback of the defense, however you want to term it. So, that certainly helped a lot. And then, I thought Mark Ingram was a really smart signing. Again, the whole chasing the Le'Veon Bell unicorn never made sense to me from the first day the rumors came out. I never bought into him. It just doesn't fit our MO. He doesn't fit our scheme. And, Mark Ingram is a much better fit from a price perspective, from a scheme perspective, and just what he'll bring to the table as really a versatile back, but ultimately that type of downhill runner that'll be successful in the type of offense we're trying to build with Lamar. So, I obviously think, those two were the key signings. The rest is kind of tinkering around the edges. I don't really think, the Seth Roberts one I think is a little interesting because I think he has some proven history. He certainly can play in the slot, can do a ton on special teams, which I think ultimately that's where he'll provide the most value for us. But I thought he was kind of a smart, kind of post free agency, typical Raven signing, a veteran who's cut, who's, has some track record of success, but also maybe with something to prove as well. So I didn't mind that one, but, this is the first time, frankly, in a long time, or at least as long, someone can probably correct me, but I feel like we're going into this draft with a lot of obvious needs, and that's never a great place to be. When you think about interior offensive line hasn't been addressed, when you think about, middle linebacker, obviously, you think about pass rush. There's a lot of, and then I'm not even talking about wide receiver, and I think we'll talk about that later. I don't perceive wide receiver as a big draft need at this point. That may be different from how you guys are thinking about it, but I just think the structure of our offense makes it so the wide receiver position, doesn't necessarily carry that type of value. So that's certainly not a position where I want to go in round one. But
hang on.
and I know we're gonna get that. We're gonna get there.
No, we already did. We were just asked that question when you came on. So,
okay.
What's more important, pass rusher or wide receiver?
To me, it's obvious. It's pass rusher. I mean, I think number one, it's just a more valuable position. Just comparing positions without even analyzing teams and needs and stuff like that. Pass rusher is always more valuable than a receiver. But when you account for what our offense is going to look like and what we need our wide receivers to do versus really what we're lacking in the pass rush department right now, especially when you consider, we don't have many proven commodities now. I'm excited to see if Bowser and or Tim Williams can step up this year, but by no means is that anything I want to necessarily necessarily rely on going into the year. And then obviously you still have Judon. But, he's now going to be the focal point for offensive lines as our main pass rusher. We don't have the inside presence anymore of a Zadarius Smith. So, pass rush for me is number one where I want to address the most. And just to round out my point about free agency and heading into the draft, I just can't remember when we've had gaping specific needs that we have going into the draft. I mean, we generally do a good job of kind of plugging holes in free agency so we can go into the draft really focusing on best player available and letting the board come to us. But I just feel like we have such obvious needs this year that I'm just not sure we're in that position. So it's not the best position to be in going into the draft, but I think the good news is the draft seems to align to our needs in terms of where the depth is. There's plenty of depth at pass rusher. I think there's plenty of interior offensive linemen as well. So I think, we kind of caught a break in terms of where our needs are and where the draft is, but it's still not the greatest position to be in. And that's why when I look back at free agency, I can't say it was a win for us. I think, we did some things that I think I'm excited about, but, with the losses and just not really addressing those losses directly, it just leaves us going into the draft with some holes to fill.
That's a really good point there, Vince, on the more obvious needs than we've seen in the past. Yeah, that's a good point. But you're wrong. It's wide receiver. It's the correct answer we were looking for. Yourself and Al and of course Bill over there all agree with you on pass rusher. I switched my mind. It's wide receiver. That's the right answer because you got to have someone to throw the football to. Next question. What wide receivers in this draft do you like, Vincent? So give us your top wide receivers you like.
So I don't know that I fell in love with one. I'm sorry, I'm talking on mute. I don't think I fell in love with a receiver, certainly not a first round receiver. AJ Brown, I think to me is the most interesting one. And I know he's the other Mississippi receiver, but I think he has the type of production that translates well to the NFL. I think the kid out of Oklahoma also is an interesting one, but I'll see. I don't know. I'm assuming he'll probably get to us, but he may not. The one thing I'll say about the receiver position is that I am staying as far away from DK Metcalf as possible. To me, he has all the makings of a first round bust at the receiver position. You have, a guy that's really much more measurables than production. And then when you look at some of his timing, his 3-cone drill, I think, was second worst on all wide receivers. His short shuttle was also probably one of the worst, I think, of all wide receivers. And those are two drills that really speak to separation and the ability to separate from defenders, move laterally, and get open. And I think that is, and especially talking, I just, that is such a key at the wide receiver position in the NFL. And you can be a gazelle and 6'5", 220 and run a straight line 4.2 40 all day long. But when you get into the league, you're going to be facing corners that are just as athletic. And frankly, at this point, with the way the league is going, just as big in a lot of cases. So it's what can you do to separate? And to me, he just has some red flags, based on some of his timing. And then, when you read the scouting report and see things like focus drops and the high drop rate at Mississippi, and you combine that with kind of what you're seeing in terms of his production or really lack thereof at Mississippi at times. And you also combine that with the injury history. And he's a guy that I'm just staying as far away from as possible. So I'm not really looking at a round one receiver. If I did, maybe AJ Brown, but to me, I don't see a dominant number one receiver in this draft, so I have no interest in taking one in the first round.
All right, so just to let you know, myself and Al both agree with you. We both like A.J. Brown a lot. All right, pass rushers, Vince. No, sorry, Bill. You didn't. Oh, you do kind of like him, but you said Butler was your guy, and you trade back, and we're like, what? All right, Vince. Pass rushers. Who do you like? Pass rushers if they got the 22. If you think one will get there. You're on mute again.
Yeah, sorry. That's a tough one, man. I mean, I think unfortunately we're in a spot where I'm not sure that any of them are going to get to us. The ones Montez Sweat, I think is out of range at this point. We'll see. Again, I haven't been as up on the mock drafts. The one I would look at, Colin Farrell, I think, is an interesting one. He could be there, but to me, he's a better fit as like a base end in a 4-3 and not necessarily a 3-4. And those kind of designations really don't matter these days anymore. But I'm just not sure he's. I think he's got some definite pass rush ability. I'm just not sure he's kind of a difference making double digit sack every year type pass rusher. But I think he would be one that I think would be realistic in our range that I would be okay with. I think Brian Burns, the kid from Florida State, is another interesting one. He fits more of a mold of a 3-4, but again, I don't know that he's first round worthy. He's probably more of a maybe in a trade down situation. But when you start looking at the Rashawn Garys, those guys aren't going to get to us. Sweat's not going to get to us. So just not really sure. At the end of the day, that there's going to be a ton of value for us there. I mean, uh, obviously you got the top of the draft is just so heavy on pass rush. It becomes a little difficult to see where we can really land a premier pass rusher at 22. But, I think for me, I don't really think we end up picking at 22. I just, it's pretty obvious. And when you heard Eric's pre-draft press conference, again, talking to the fact of the depth of this class, the fact that we want more picks was a big theme. I mean, he's all but saying we're going to do everything possible to get out of 22. Now, it's easier said than done. You got to find a trade partner, but we have a track record of ultimately, even times when I felt like, man, how are we going to get out of this pick? We find a way to get out of it. So I just feel like when we get on the clock, we're going to find a way to get out of 22 and get a lot more value and pick up an additional day two pick, where I think that's where the value is in this draft if you're not picking in the top 10.
All right. That kind of catches you up there with everything. Here's the next question for everyone around the horn. The AFC North has obviously changed this offseason big time. What are your predictions for first, second, third, fourth? Al, I'll start with you. Just give me your predictions. What do you think first, second, third, fourth? How tough is this division now? That's the question that we're kind of getting down to. How tough is this division?
I mean, I'll start with the Browns. I mean, the Browns on paper are definitely a better football team than they were last year. Now, how that translates to the actual football field, I'm not sure, but on paper, they're the best team in the division. and they're one of the better teams in the AFC. So you definitely have to be concerned and worried about the Browns. I still think Pittsburgh has talent left there. Uh, that with a Hall of Fame quarterback, I mean Juju Smith-Schuster that's shown he can play. James Conner showed that he can kind of fill the void that Le'Veon Bell left in Pittsburgh. Um, if they can shore up some spots on the defensive side of the football in the draft, I wouldn't count the Steelers out either. I think the Steelers are going to be a good team as well. Um, Cincinnati, you kind of want to count them out a little bit. I mean, I think they've got to get better on defense. But a team with AJ Green, I mean, some other weapons, Joe Mixon, in the backfield. You know Tyler Boyd. So they've got receivers, they've got playmakers at the running back spot. So they're going to be a good team too. The AFC North is going to be a very challenging division. I think at the end of the day, this it's going to be the same recipe that we saw last year: defense and a strong running game. Um, my hope as a fan is that Lamar Jackson has really progressed as a passer. I think the offense is going to change that the Ravens are running. I think you're going to see a lot more added to the offense, especially with a full offseason to work on it. Um, to think that they're going to come back out with the same stuff we saw at the end of last year, I mean, is just foolish. So everyone that continues to say that is ridiculous. Um, the Ravens coaching staff is working, and they're going to be working to put a different look offense, or just add a few more wrinkles to the offense out there, um, out there. So I mean, AFC North is going to be tough. I mean, but the Ravens are the champs
Give me your winner.
someone beats them. So
Give me your winner. Who's going to win this division? Is it the Ravens or is it the Browns? Is it the Steelers? The band? Come on.
it's a tough one. I mean, the odds-on favorite, if I was betting, I would say the Browns are going to win it.
Okay. You know why? Because you didn't draft a wide receiver at 22.
I drafted a pass rusher to go get Baker Mayfield and put him on his ass. That's what I did.
Nothing like an April 10th prediction.
All right, Bill.
My favorite.
The AFC North. This is a tough division. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I agree with what I agree. I agree with what Al was saying in regards to the Browns being better on paper. Obviously, adding a player like Odell Beckham Jr. is an insane addition. I don't think they gave up as much as could have been expected if you were to say, what would you trade for Odell Beckham? So, I mean, good on them. They've got to play the games, though. That's why you play the games. So, we'll see. It's difficult to make predictions, April 11th or 10th, whatever today is, because we don't know who Baltimore is going to add in the draft yet. We don't know who they're going to add in the second wave of free agency yet. But I like our chances with our roster already. I mean, I think we match up as far as with weapon to weapon. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with our secondary, even against, Landry and Beckham, although it's going to be a tall challenge. I think we're up for it. So as far as that goes, we just, need a pass rusher to get to the quarterback. That's all.
Gotcha. Wrong answer. Wide receiver because you failed. Vince, you're up. AFC North. But here's the real question. How worried are you now about playing these division opponents?
I mean, look, the AFC North is always tough. Like I don't really expect it to be any different than any other year. I think, the Browns are getting all the hype, obviously, because they won the offseason, but, offseason championships usually don't always result in on-field success. So, to me, they got a rookie head coach there in Freddie Kitchens that has a lot of personalities to deal with, and they need to gel and become a team before I can fully buy in. Now, in saying that, Baker Mayfield is absolutely a guy that can lead this team, and he's a strong enough personality where I feel like he can deal with some of the characters that are on that team. Obviously with Beckham and I think the relationship with Beckham and Landry, I think, will help there too in terms of establishing that credibility and I think Odell probably was so shocked by the fact that he got traded away from the Giants. I think, you're probably going to get unfortunately a pissed off Odell Beckham who's fully focused, and that's probably not going to end up being good news for us. But, I'm not ready to crown the Browns by any means yet. And, I still think their defense is maturing and not really ready for necessarily prime time. But, with that said, certainly they've put themselves in the conversation now where, it's to me, and for a while it was us, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals. It's now Ravens, Steelers, Browns for sure. I mean, the Bengals are an afterthought. They look like a train wreck to me. I think Zach Taylor is probably ready to move on from Andy Dalton, and I'll be interested to see what they do in the draft. They might decide to either tank or blow it up. I think they're in the process of getting towards a major rebuild, so I don't really consider them a threat at all. But talking about the Steelers, I wanna say they're done. But I think to some earlier points, you can never say that about the Steelers. For whatever reason, they will always find a way to field a competitive team. Now, with that said, Tomlin's got his work cut out for him. I mean, I don't know what I think that defense is frankly been a mess ever since Ryan Shazier had that horrible injury, and they haven't been the same since. So. And they haven't done anything besides overpay a bad slot corner to approach anything that would lead me to believe that they're ready to turn a corner as a defense. And then you got Roethlisberger with a lot less weapons, and so we'll see how that ends up. I think they'll be competitive, but right now we're still the AFC North champs. I still feel good about where we can be as long as Lamar can take that next step and really develop his game as a passer and become really that what we need it to be a successful NFL quarterback in terms of throwing with anticipation more, being able to be more accurate with the football and intermediate and routes to the boundary, and just being able to be more of a threat within the pocket, within the structure of an offense, so we can open it up and do some more things, to Al's point, because we're not going to obviously do what we did exclusively last year when we had a formula that was winning games, but that we all know that wasn't necessarily sustainable. So, I think we're in a position where we're right in it. We're still the champs. Nobody to me is head and shoulders above us, and that including Cleveland, because to me they still have something to prove on defense, and we'll see how they gel. But I think we're clearly better positioned than the Steelers at this point. I just Cincinnati is an afterthought, so it's going to be a tough division, but we're right there.
Gotcha. And you drafted a pass rusher, so Lamar didn't develop or do anything you just said there. That's why. That's why I told you before. That's what I told you before. The answer is wide receiver at 22, or trade back and get a wide receiver. That's what I'm putting all my money on. Look, this is a difficult division. The Steelers are going to be good. The Bengals are still going to be good, and so are the Browns, of course. So This is going to be a tough year for the Ravens. The best way for them to win, get a wide receiver. Don't so much worry about the pass rush, because when you only have the football for 19 minutes, because we hold it for 41 because of my boy Lamar Jackson, the most electrifying player in the National Football League, has a wide receiver, watch out. The Ravens can win more games. They could go 12-4 this year. In fact, I keep asking people to give me 10+ wins, but no one wants to take it, so that's fine. Moving on to our next question. Jimmy Smith, does he get traded in this draft? And if he does, what do you get for him? Vince, if you're going to trade Jimmy Smith in the draft, what do you get for him? A pick or a player?
I think it's a pick, and I think it could happen during the draft, and it's certainly a pretty interesting, and I would give it at like a 25 to 30% chance of happening. I mean, a legitimate chance. I wouldn't call it certain by or likely by any means, but to me, I think there's a scenario where, especially if we get stuck at 22 for some reason and we make a selection, but then we move into day 2 and we've identified some guys, that we love, and we can somehow offer, get a second round pick for Jimmy Smith from one of those teams in the second round and jump in and get a guy. I do not rule that out by any means. I think you look at the depth at cornerback, and, obviously, look, I think Jimmy is a valuable player. I think he makes us a much better defense when healthy and playing like we know Jimmy can play. Because I had to qualify it is why I think we can make the chance. We can make the trade. So, to me, again, I don't think it's likely, to be clear, but it's definitely a more than non-zero chance. And I think there's a scenario, especially if we get stuck at 22, that I think we would have to explore it.
Al, Jimmy Smith traded for a pick or a player on draft day?
It all depends on what you can get. I think my gut's leaning towards I would trade him for a pick on draft day. I don't know how high of a pick the Ravens are going to get for Jimmy Smith. Um, my guess would be maybe you can get a third rounder. I'd love to get a second rounder for Jimmy Smith, but I just don't think that happens. So I'm at a trade him for a I'm at a I trade him for a pick. Um, I just don't know enough of who I would match up to, or a team would be interested in trading kind of player for player for Jimmy Smith.
Bill, Jimmy Smith, trading him for a pick or a player?
I can't hear what Vincent said, so I don't know. I can't hear anything Vince says, so I can't respond. But yeah, the only way I'd trade him is if I was to get a second round pick or higher. But yeah, second round pick. I would not look to trade him because I like him as a player. Especially for this year when we are going to have to depend upon the secondary because our pass rushers are unproven. But yeah, I mean, if somebody was to call, this is not a strong year for corners in the draft, in my opinion. So after the top couple guys, the guys that could actually play some meaningful snaps this year are gone. If a team that is quarterback needy comes a calling in the second round, I don't know how much you guys pay attention to like the mock draft websites or whatever. But I just personally like to run my own scenarios and see like who comes up repeatedly and all that stuff. And I have to say, I'm not really liking having one pick at 22 and not another one until 84 or whatever the number is. I haven't really liked my draft spread from that result. So I would love to tighten up our picks a little bit, pick at number 31 or something and, get number 57 somehow with trading a package of players or whatever, package of whatever. But yeah, I would trade Jimmy Smith if we could get a second, but I would not move him just because of salary, and I wouldn't take like a dump him type pick. Like I would not take a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick for Jimmy Smith.
Gotcha. It was the 85th pick we have in the 3rd round. So Jimmy Smith, I would trade him for an offensive lineman. If I could get center or an offensive guard, I would trade Jimmy Smith for that. Not for a pick, to be honest with you. I trade him for a player. That's my opinion. All right, last part of the segment. Bold predictions for this draft. Since we're 2 weeks away, pretty much, give me a bold prediction that the Ravens might do, or you can name another team, but we'll stick to the Ravens. That might happen in this draft. They'll give me a bold prediction that Eric DeCosta might do. Who knows in this draft?
Interesting. I will say
it's a wild card year. We don't know what he's going to do. We've never seen him do this before. Give me a bold prediction.
I say we trade up to number 14 to draft Brian Burns.
That's a bold prediction. I like that. Vince, give me a bold prediction. Eric DeCosta, what do you think?
Bold. We draft. I don't know. I really don't have a bold prediction. Maybe we don't trade at all. That's my boldest prediction because it ain't gonna happen. No, I think I don't have one.
You don't have one. There's no bold prediction. Nothing you think. Like last year, Ozzie moved back into the 1st round.
Yeah, I don't.
No bold prediction. Nothing you think he's going to do.
No, I think we're going to just trade back and get a bunch of picks.
Okay. That's
just keep.
He goes back pretty far. Anything with that?
I think we're going to. Yeah, I mean, I think.
Do we trade out of the 1st round?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, all right, I'll do that. We don't make a 1st round pick. I mean, that's not that bold, though. But whatever.
That is kind of bold. That's bold. All right, now.
That's not bold at all.
Give me a bold prediction here.
The Ravens, if they trade back or move up, the Ravens are taking 2 receivers, but the first 2 picks will be receivers.
You suck because that was my bold prediction. Was the first 2
there's nothing bold that I can think of about this draft. I mean, the bold prediction is they trade up to number 2 and get Nick Bosa.
No, I'll give you one. I think 5 quarterbacks go in the 1st round. Off the Ravens, 5 quarterbacks. That's going to push a player to us. And that's what I think is. If a player drops, Vincent, who do you think drops to 22 in that range? Every year it happens. We all know every year a player drops. Give me a player.
Like Derwin James.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
I think, there's
just like Derwin James.
About him.
Yeah.
Or
can you hear me, Vince?
Hey, you guys there?
Yeah, go ahead. How we can hear you.
What was the question? It was bold predict, right?
Every year a player drops. And
who could drop?
Magically get to us. Who's that player?
Rashawn Gary.
Wow, that's a good bold prediction for a player that might drop down. That's
a
good one.
I think he could. You hear some whispers about him. And he just seems like one of those guys, not hugely productive. So that could be, he seems like one that could slip.
I like it. That's a good one. I've actually heard of that before. Al, anything the update there? Anyone who might drop? You sure? Want to change your mind from before? I was talking on mute.
Yeah, but I don't think there's going to be as many surprises in this first round as people think. I mean, I just think the top end talent. I mean, this is probably the year where you could write off the first 10, maybe not in the same order, but you can write off the first 10, and those are going to be the guys that go. I mean, it's Kyler Murray at the top, Nick Bosa, Quentin Williams, the pass rusher from Kentucky, Josh Allen. I mean, those are like your top. That's your top five there. It's gonna.
All right. Bill, anything else to add on that? Just for any player might drop that change your mind. Now you're thinking about it.
I mean, I'm crossing my fingers for Brian Burns at 22.
All right. I'm sticking to the Brian Burns. I'm sticking to AJ Brown. I hope he gets to 22. All right. I guess our next podcast we can do pretty much going to be all draft talk. So all we got to do is just study up on players we like. I want to talk about players we like for the draft, and maybe do a little mock draft. I don't know. Maybe somebody here does mock drafts. I don't know who that could be.
We know who that is.
We always do our annual mock.
Exactly.
I mean, let's keep it to Ravens though. Let's do a Ravens mock draft. I'm not interested in trying to figure out who the Dolphins are going to take, man.
Yeah, we don't have to do that on the pod. That's the lunch, Rob.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Is that going to be Thursday? Is that right? 'Cause Bill, what time are you coming down?
I get in on Wednesday afternoon sometime, and I'm going up to my parents' house, and then I'll be at your place sometime Thursday late afternoon, probably.
All right. So then I'll meet Al and Vince for lunch. Then that's fine.
Are y'all doing it? Y'all doing it that day, Thursday?
Have to do it Thursday. Yeah, that's the day of the draft.
All right. Yeah, I might come down for that. Depending on what time.
Yeah.
What do you say, Vince?
Well, that's our usual, right? We do the annual.
Yeah.
Do that
We
again?
don't have to do that on the pod, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
you want to do it on the podcast? Or you want to do it live in person?
No, with the lunch. Yeah.
All right. The Green Turtle one.
Yeah, that
all right.
works.
That's fine. All right. That's cool. But we'll still do a podcast the night before.
All right.
Just talk about your favorite players. It's a short podcast. Just your favorite players that you want this team to draft.
Yeah, more Ravens focus. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep. All
All
right.
right, that works for me.
Well, then I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
All right, see you then.
All right, see you.
All right, bye.